So I've been on the record multiple times on this channel talking about how much I love the 1978 Halloween, as well as the 40-year later sequel, also called Halloween, which came out in 2018. So I love both of those movies. And Halloween Kills was honestly probably one of my most, I'd say maybe like two or three most anticipated movies of all of this year, because I really love both of those films. And I think that David Gordon Green, Jamie Lee Curtis, John Carpenter, Danny McBride, when they got together to make the 2018 movie, they really understood kind of the essence of the original and what made it work so well. And I think that's certainly still the case. I don't doubt that they understand um, the original movie, and Carpenter is still heavily involved with this one. So I think this movie does a lot of stuff really, really, really well. And then it gets some of the most important stuff um, horribly wrong. So let's discuss. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking about all of the things I dislike about this movie, and then I'm going to talk about the things that I really do like. I think this movie doesn't really even hold a candle to the 2018 film, and certainly doesn't hold a candle to the 1978 original. And the big part of the problem is that this movie spends a lot of time up its own ass. It seems to come off as very, very, very self-important. There's this through line throughout the film about people like the mob going after, getting built up into a frenzy. And might be like a little bit spoilers, but like going after the wrong person, making a bunch of assumptions, making a decision based on this like frothing at the mouth insanity that happens when people get into a crowd and get all worked up. Very on brand for 2021, in which the wrong word or statement or thought or even something taken completely out of context can destroy a person's life, livelihood, career, family, friendships, and basically everything they've ever held dear. And that makes sense, right? It's a movie that's of its time. It spends, it actually has a bunch of time spent in the past. There are flashbacks, entire sequences taking place in 1978 involving Officer Hawkins and his involvement in Michael Myers' capture, his guilt over how he in particular handled that whole situation. And none of this really seems necessary in the story they want to tell. Partially because what the 2018 film got so right was it was very simple, right? It understood the Michael character as this unstoppable killing machine that's super duper evil. This movie definitely doubles down on that, but tries to flesh out many of the side characters in a way that's unnecessary. So one of the big criticisms of the Rob Zombie Halloween was that it spent a lot of time fleshing out unnecessarily the character of Michael Myers. His family life as a kid, him, the ultimate like murder of his family that led to his incarceration in a mental institution, the breaking out, and like Michael as a kid is a speaking, like living, breathing character, and that was really much unnecessary. This movie has the opposite problem where Michael is still very much this force of nature that's terrifying, unstoppable, unkillable, all of that stuff to an extreme degree, which is actually one of the things I love about the movie. But then all of these side characters that nobody really gives a rip about become super duper fleshed out. The Tommy Doyle character, who is the kid that Laurie is babysitting in the original 1978 film, is all grown up and played by Anthony Michael Hall, and he's the one who's like leading this push to go, kill Michael Myers. And there's this whole like evil dies tonight thing that I think worked well in the head of the screenwriters and maybe looked good on paper, but in this movie sucks and comes off as way too ham-fisted, way too in your face, and extremely obnoxious. And it's not really well acted from any of those characters. And their desire to really thread this movie and the last movie so deeply into the 1978 film really doesn't succeed, in my opinion, upon first viewing. at some point, maybe 6 months, year from now, I'll go back and watch it again. I'll certainly watch it again before Halloween Ends comes out next Halloween. And yeah, the stuff in the past, I understand what they're trying to do. There's way too much of it. It doesn't work. I think that would have been better served by fleshing out the modern day 2018 story, because this movie picks up in the present day right after that, despite being threaded with all these flashbacks and stuff. And the movie has a ton of problems with like pacing and character, and it's weird because there's also things that are a part of that that they get right. Like, spoiler alert from the 2018 film, one of the main characters, Allison's father, is killed, right? And in most of these movies, when a main character is killed, there's no grieving process for anybody. It's just like, let's move on and escape and kill the bad guy. And that stuff is actually handled really well here. Like, they grieve over, Allison grieves over the loss of her of her father, and Karen grieves over the loss of her husband. And this stuff is talked about. It's not just like swept to the side and ignored like it is in other slasher films. And that stuff is handled fairly well, despite all of the missteps in terms of the rest of the story and all of these other side characters. They bring back basically all of the like surviving victims of the 1978 story, and they have, some of them survive, certainly some of them don't, but it's just not. It's just none of that is handled well. There's no other way to say it, and it sucks because I really had high hopes for this movie. So that's what I really, really don't like about it. I think it's just not. That stuff is a huge misfire, and it's really unfortunate because I didn't care about any of these characters because the movie tried so hard to make me. Okay, so what works? The character of Michael Myers, because holy crap, he's awesome in this. This is probably the best version of the character, in my opinion. He's this completely unstoppable killing machine that will just, he's like a Terminator, and it's awesome. I love characters that are like that. I love the faceless, is certainly not nameless, but like the mostly faceless character that is just completely wicked and nasty. And the kills in this movie are phenomenal. Like, this is like the most, and it does it without really going too over the top. This is an extremely violent movie. It's gory, it's bloody, it's nasty. The character of Michael is mean and terrifying, and they try so hard to contrast that with like the well-meaning, regular characters that want to take this guy out, and I appreciate that to a certain extent, but it really is overshadowed by some of the rest of the stuff in the movie. I love this version of Michael, and that's what's so frustrating. He's got those dead eyes. You can actually see a little bit more of his eyes than you can in the last movie, which is kind of cool. The physicality of the character, just this is unlike anything I've seen in any of the other movies, and that includes the zombie films, in which Michael's a very, very dark character. And I think this movie even more so to a certain extent. And it's just, that part of it's so good. It's just so good. And that's my frustration with the movie, right? It's like it's so hit or miss for me. I'm lukewarm like half the time, and then I love the rest of it. And yeah, this movie is just, it does a lot right, and it does a lot wrong. And it understands the Michael character while completely fumbling all of the elements that surround him, in trying to inject this side story about, the mob going after people, and also giving us so much backstory about the 1978 movie that it just doesn't, that part of it simply does not work. So I liked the movie. I'd say overall, I didn't love it. I don't adore this like I do the 2018 film. It doesn't hold a candle to either of those other movies, despite doing so much well. I think it's really simple. If I had to put it in like one sentence, I loved everything about Michael Myers, and I hated everything else. Thank you so much for checking out the video. If you liked it or found it helpful, please consider subscribing. You can also like and share it. That tells YouTube it's worth promoting. Sound off down in the comments. Let me know what you think of Halloween Kills. I'm really interested to see if I'm off base on this one. I know the critics kind of savaged it, and most audiences enjoyed it. I would love to know what you think. Hit me up down in the comments, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.